Cameron Crowe and Joe Greenlee here. We're going to talk about Joe's Coal Valley experience. But if you have never seen one of these videos yet, then I will do an introduction. This is only the 25th time I've done this, so if I breeze over something, know that you can come and find the all the info. So so I wrote, it was actually the original ones here. I wrote a blog post reflecting on my time at Coal Valley Christian about 2.5 months ago. And my goal with that was tell the sugar-coated, uncensored, real story of what I think is wrong with Coal Valley Christian. Something that took me probably 4 or 5 years after graduating the school that I went to for 13 years to really realize why some of these things were a problem. When I left, I thought everything was hunky-dory, no issues, love everything. Time went by and I was like, actually, some of that stuff was really messed up. So I wrote it and tons of people reacted. Like, some people were really angry at me and felt like I had betrayed them and their family, and like that, how could I do this to the people that work for the school? And then on the other side were the people that were like, oh my God, you have no idea how good it feels to see somebody say it publicly. I've thought that for years, but I thought it was only me or me and the 2 people I'd talked to about it. But here's my story, and I'd be pretty much every story blew away my story in terms of harm. So I was like, wow, people need to be able to talk about this with somebody besides me. So we made a support group on Facebook. People started joining it, telling their stories, and in some cases, graphic detail. In some cases, for the very first time, had never told these stories before. So it was a very liberating thing. And we decided, like, this is a bigger thing than just a blog post and a support group. Created a website where we put all the public content that we've been creating, stuff that people feel comfortable sharing for a public audience, and not just a sympathetic, supportive audience that is basically there to help you and not to debate you. So I think this is probably like the 25th public interview on the site. We also shifted towards realizing that the opportunity is bigger here than just getting stuff off of our chest. Though that's a really good thing in helping people process and heal from some of this stuff, healing that they didn't know they needed to do, we realized that the stories of younger students, either currently at the school or recently graduated from the school, were no better than ours were. In some cases, they were worse. And we're like, okay, well, it was certainly not okay what I went through, but if this is still happening to kids, if there's still kids that when they get raped, that's not going to the police, there's still kids that that are LGBT and that are contemplating suicide on a daily basis, there's still, X, Y, Z, and there's about a bunch of categories of issues. If that's still happening, we can't just talk about it. We need to try to do something and make the school better. So that's what we did with this joint statement. This was over 24 people contributed to it, and we categorized all of these issues and provided direct quotes from people's stories as illustrations and summarized the themes, and then even proposed recommended solutions on each of these that do not require Coal Valley to change their religious beliefs, because that's a non-starter. They're like, they're going to be a Christian school. It's a free country. So we framed all of our recommendations on things that are common sense and that Christians can just as easily get behind as non-Christians. And our group is about 50-50 Christians and no longer Christians. So we have started doing some peaceful demonstrations at the school. We did one here, National Day of Prayer. We did another one earlier this week. And we recently got acknowledged for the first time by the administration with a misleading email that they sent to the whole school body talking about basically we're a nothing group and don't worry about it. We've got it handled. This was the first acknowledgement in 2 months since we've written this joint statement. And we've been trying to talk to them every week. We've been pushing and pushing, and we won't stop until we have a roundtable discussion where all of the organizers of Coal Valley Speaks can talk to the leadership of the school and be heard and try to find common ground and see how we can work together. So far, they've shown a zero interest in doing that. So we'll see if that changes, hopefully. Okay, Joe, tell me about when you first got exposed to this movement. Was it the blog post or something else? And what did you think when you were seeing it?
I think I saw someone mention your blog post because I don't think we were friends on Facebook at the time. And I got routed through that to Reddit through, and then I think the joint statement, or trying to remember if the joint statement was up yet or not.
Okay.
But it came to everything kind of late. There was already probably 120 people in the Coal Valley support group, Coal Valley Speak support group, that had seen this grow from the very beginning. So my first reaction to it was, I was a little surprised. I
Just a little?
Yeah, a little. But as I read through it, I think the second time, because I read through it once and then scrolled back up, started reading through it again, and just realized, this is giving voice to a lot of complaints and issues that are really legitimate. We can get on my background of Coal Valley later, but I think I felt validated in my criticisms of Coal Valley in seeing your criticisms as well, because I had only heard anyone complain about, the hand that fed us or whatever from very few other sources, and then seeing, okay, this is a lot of people that had issues with the school and the way that they taught, that it was validating.
Yeah. What did it feel like in the support group because if I remember right, you posted about your background in there. Isn't that right?
Yeah. A little bit. I commented on someone else's stories, a few other comments here and there. I didn't post my own.
Okay.
Piggybacked off of someone else. That's what I do best. Following in my brother's footsteps, just piggyback off him. No.
For those of you that don't know, his older brother Max it was in my class here, and we're good friends.
The famed Max Greenlee, yes.
Max for depending on who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, there were some discussions about mental health issues and specifically how the school did not address those very well. And it was kind of a wow moment for me, because I knew my experiences hadn't been great with the counseling system at Coal Valley, and then the counselors that they recommended at Coal Valley had not been great either. If it hadn't been for my mom's initiative to really find, okay, no, we're gonna find a good counselor who understands psychotherapy and things like that to help me out, I don't think I would still be here. It was that bad. I was suicidal by the time I was 15.
Suicidal inclinations?
Yeah. From the time I was 15 all through the rest of high school, on and off.
Wow. Dark place.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do some background, and then we'll come back to some of this stuff, because I want to maybe get some more details. But what year did you graduate? How many years did you go to Coal Valley? Were you involved in any kind of student organizations? Give me your Coal Valley resume.
Yeah. Curriculum vitae and all that.
Yeah.
I went to Coal Valley K through 12, graduated class of 2012. So I was 4 years behind you and my brother, of course. Wasn't really involved in anything until high school. Junior high and high school, I played football. Was really into quiz team all 4 years of high school. We made it to nationals my senior year. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that was probably the height of my involvement. I was kind of an awkward kid, but nice enough that I was able to intermingle with all kinds of social groups. I don't think I had any, like, people talk about the high school enemies and that kind of stuff. I didn't have that experience. I just kind of mingled with whoever. I had
Were you click proof?
I was pretty much click proof. Yeah.
Wow. Superpower.
I did have my core group of friends, but I hung out with just about everyone. I played football and quiz team, so I kind of had my football spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other big things that that served me going through school is being a smart kid, but following behind my brother, who is my brother. Max is very, very smart, was like a 3.95 student in high school or something like that. I think he got 1 B+ in one class, like his freshman year or something like that. It's something stupid. I think it was a Bible class too, so he was extra annoyed at that. Yeah, I know. Terrible. Especially because those are easy A's. And I think teachers had an expectation that I would do as he did, and I was not that kind of student. But I did pretty well, and in spite of my mental health issues, besides having to go to summer school a couple times for English classes because I just didn't turn stuff in, but that's getting into mental health stuff.
Can I ask about not about Max, but related to Max?
Yeah.
Did it bother you to kind of be following in your brother's footsteps? Like, was that, there was an expectation, but was that like something that bugged you?
Absolutely. And that's something I get outside of the Coal Valley bubble as well. That's something I get everywhere I go. My dad used to be student dean for Boise Bible College and is a church elder at my church. That's a roughly 2,000 person congregation. So for a while there, I didn't give out my last name because I got tired of people either knowing me as Max's little brother or as John Greenlee's son.
You're like, I'm my own person.
Yeah, exactly. So at Coal Valley, that was a big deal because we had a lot of the same teachers. I followed in his footsteps a lot, but then would get frustrated when people would assume that I was following in his footsteps. Like, I took Latin because he took Latin in high school. I was good at math and worked hard to have a particular teacher because he did good at math. He was really good at math. And worked to cultivate relationships with certain people and on certain groups the way he did.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I really resented always being, oh, you're Max's little brother, aren't you? Yeah. Congratulations, you can recognize the last name. Good for you.
I can imagine that getting old pretty quick.
Yeah.
So Kyle Arnold, who was a year older than me, he's had, I think, one or two siblings ahead of him, and he sounded like he thought it was great because he got to milk it, and like it was kind of like he had some privilege because of that, and like he got some slack because of it. Did it feel like that for you, or was it more of more bothersome?
More bothersome, definitely. specifically in my freshman year English, I think it was freshman year English class, and my Latin class, the teacher in question had great expectations for me, and that wasn't entirely because of Max. Max had done very well in all her classes, so I think she assumed a little bit there. But I had moments of brilliance, if you will, and then didn't follow through on actually keeping up on work. So I think she got frustrated there and was just like kind of wondering, why can't you be more like your brother? At least that's the impression I got.
That you weren't able to live up to the standard or something.
Yeah.
Got it. So let's go deeper into this mental health stuff. Can you tell me like kind of when you started having trouble and how that developed, and you saw counselors, but was it walk me through that story, how the key chapters in there and kind of what it felt like.
So 8th grade, I started noticing that I was kind of lethargic at times, but it was purely an energy level thing. Like no matter how much I slept, how much I overslept, I didn't have motivation and I was feeling kind of sad a lot of the times. And I kind of put it off. It was one of those things that looking back, I realized, I should have addressed that right then and there. But, I'm 13, 14, something like that in 8th grade. So I didn't know any better to address that. Sophomore year, self-harming, mostly because of guilt of things I had done, which, what kind of 15-year-old really do that's that bad, but that's the way it was.
So that was freshman year?
Sophomore year. That was
sophomore year. Got it.
And then sometime I think in the spring of sophomore year was the first time I was suicidal.
Did you actually attempt it?
Not at the time, no. I did later on in high school. At this time, my brother was at Boise State. My parents call him. He takes me out for ice cream. We talk and that kind of stuff. And I get connected with the school counselor, the high school counselor, and she recommends I go into regular plain old counseling outside of the school, and recommends this one guy in particular. The guy she recommended was maybe 25, 26, something like that. I think he had just finished his degree, and I was one of his first clients. And he was not the best. At one point, I had mentioned, as is a symptom of having bipolar, that I was having trouble sleeping. And this sticks out to me just because it's so funny, but also so shows how out of the loop he was, because he asked me if I tried masturbating to sleep at night. And it's like, I'm a 15-year-old boy. What do you think? Just take a wild guess there, buddy. But it was just kind of like, it
doesn't seem like a medical best practice for this.
Yeah. And just like how that was the only thing he could ask me. That's really your best solution,
right?
Got switched to a couple other counselors here and there. My mom really took the initiative to find someone who would be a really good fit for me, away from the people that the counselor at Coal Valley was recommending. Not to spite Coal Valley, just to say, there's a level of help that we need, and we're going to seek that out on our own.
Well, and the last person you connected with us with wasn't cutting it.
Yeah, exactly. So through trials and tribulations there. Finally got on medication, and occasionally in and out of psychotherapy, mostly cognitive behavior therapy. And that helped quite a bit, but I still wasn't doing great in school. And I think the other problem that I had with Coal Valley, the mental health care at least, is that knowing that I had bipolar, knowing that I was diagnosed, and going through all this, as my memory serves me. So if people who are there want to correct me on this, go for it. But as my memory serves me, the school counselor went to some of my friends and asked if I had started doing drugs because my grades were dropping. And that hurt me so much because she didn't come to me first and just ask. And she should have known better because she knew what was going on in my life and the diagnosis I had had for a couple years at this point. This was my junior year when she asked this to my friends. That was the really frustrating moment for me, where it was just, it felt like my mental health wasn't being taken seriously.
Do you think she just didn't know what that was? That like that could be an explanation for the grades thing? Like she's like, oh yeah, like Joe's bipolar, but like I don't really know what that is, so I think this is drugs.
Possibly. I think that the counselor was smart enough that she should have known better. But yeah, that's a possibility, I guess. Yeah.
Hmm. And you said you did attempt suicide.
Yeah.
Was that after this?
Yeah, this would be going into my junior year. Going into my junior year, I think coming out of my junior year. I had some trauma stuff happen this summer between my sophomore and junior year, and so I think that was a compounding factor with my bipolar disorder.
Can you share anything about the trauma?
Yeah. So I had to go to summer school to bring my English grade up. Met a girl there, started dating, and then when it came to the school year, some of my peers took issue with the fact that she was not a Christian, and reminded me of my responsibilities as a Christian to not be unequally yoked. So I should be careful how I phrase this, because it was not their doing, it was my doing. I was the one who broke up with her after promising her that I was different from other guys she had dated and all this other stuff. She then tried to kill herself while on the phone with me. So I had to listen to everything that she was doing to herself. She was trying to cut open her femoral artery. I still recall the phone call very distinctly. And that kind of messed with me.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that was kind of a reinforcement of the purity culture, and like you got to follow these rules that are set out for you. I do think that it probably wasn't a good fit for us to date in the first place, and but the way that I went about it was wrong, and yeah, there was just a lot of people at fault in that situation.
Did you feel like you were kind of close to the edge before that happened, and that just like was kind of like pushed you over,
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha. Did you, I mean, I don't know that much about um, suicidal behavior or anything, but like, was that something that you think somebody could have caught or noticed or prevented the attempt? Like, was there anything that could have been done?
Um, so I'm a little bit of an odd case because I've attempted a few times.
Really?
um, I don't leave notes and or like give away possessions beforehand or anything like that. If I'm going to do it, it's usually a pretty set in, no, this is what I'm doing now. And so I don't give the usual indicators that like textbook cases do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just kind of my own neuroses and weird weird compounding factors there. So I don't. The school should have been paying closer attention, and there were things that I was writing, especially in English classes, that were very overtly about self-harm or hurting myself or things like that. But and those weren't addressed at all. Uh, but as far as like what more obvious signs, I wasn't giving those off.
Do you feel like um, I'm curious from the lens of Coal Valley Christian School, like, is there only involvement that they maybe could have noticed and done something before the attempt, or was there actually something that they were teaching that drove you to that or contributed to, like, I know you mentioned guilt earlier on, and like I know that's
Mm-hmm.
a big part of fundamentalist Christianity is a lot of guilt. Do you feel like that was part of it, like part of these kind of Christian um, principles that were kind of contributing?
Um, hmm. Yeah, I think that there's an emphasis, especially for young men, to not utilize pornography at all. Um, and that emphasis is placed at the expense of love your neighbor as yourself. And, you know, when Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment? It says, love God and love your neighbor. Um, I think sexual sin and sexuality in general are placed on this pedestal of, well, like the opposite of a pedestal, like it's somehow these are the worst things you can do. And so I think that emphasis,
I'm trying to think
um,
about what an actual pedestal like that would look like, but yeah.
a little hole dug into the earth,
Yeah,
like
it's like, is this a
3
pit?
feet.
Yeah.
um, so I think the emphasis there on you have to do these right things and you have to avoid this, more specifically, these are the things you have to avoid rather than these are the things you have to do. I think those were that's a difficult fine line to teach, and when you're trying to teach it to a bunch of teenagers, that's even more difficult.
Right. Yeah. Why why is sexuality on such a pedestal?
um I think that it is something that since hmm, so if you go back to John Calvin, all the way
Perfect.
back, um a lot of the puritanical Reformation movement came out of an idea of you have to prove that you are elect by being the most righteous possible, or that's a Calvinists are going to get upset with me for phrasing it that way, but that's the idea, is that if you're one of the elect, you will be righteous. And so Coal Valley, as a Calvinist institution, and American evangelical Christianity as coming out of the Puritans, has this idea that to be righteous, you have to be the best. And sexuality is, while in and of itself isn't something wrong, giving yourself over to that and being involved with that is seen as the lesser good. So it's like, I think if you were to talk to like 17th century Puritans, it's this idea of like, yeah, having sex as a married couple is a wonderful God-given thing. But if you're obsessed with that, then you're not focused on God. So obviously you need to focus less on that and focus more on God. And so it became more and more pushed to the side. And over time, as culture gets more, like since the 50s, more and more sexualized,
right,
and open and fighting against that repression, I think that it's kind of a pendulum swing. Like, oh, culture's swinging one way, we got to go hard the other way.
I'm glad you went into the Calvinist explanation. I was like thinking Freud or something. I was like, Freud's probably closer than everybody else, or at least in the historical thinkers. There's probably new stuff I don't know about, but like sexuality is such a big part of identity and consciousness and our DNA that it's almost uncontrollable in some ways. But these Puritans are like, don't like anything to be out of control, and especially anything that feels base or like animalistic or like, not of God, like some, like temptations or whatever, like that just becomes like the dirty, gross thing that smears everything the wrong way, and we just need to avoid it at all costs, which makes it its special category of sin.
Yeah.
How does homosexuality fit into all this?
So,
particularly related to Coal Valley. I mean, we can go back to Calvin, but
yeah. Try to stay on topic here. I know, I'll promise.
No, that was a good tangent. I like that.
So, I think that since, at least in my memory, since like Prop 8 in California, it was Prop 8, right?
Gay rights.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah.
It was one of those propositions in California. But when that all started really gaining momentum, it was seen as cultural denial of what God-given sexuality is supposed to be. And so to embrace even a little of that and to say, well, what Paul's writing about in Romans 3 is not the way we understand homosexual relationships today, same-sex relationships today. To give even a little ground, I think is seen as like heretical almost. So I think with Coal Valley is there
because of the pedestal.
Yeah.
And it's like the pedestal, but like with the asterisk, because it's like not only sexuality, which we don't like in general, but this unnatural sexuality.
So I think Coal Valley is trying to toe the party line there. because you do still have a pretty populous amount of fundamentalist evangelical Christians that believe that homosexuality is a sin. I'm still on the
What's your take?
I honestly don't know. I'm still working on that because I don't know what like there's a couple passages in Romans about submitting to the authorities and that kind of stuff. And it's like, you can't be against the legal recognition of gay marriage for obvious reasons, because that would be going against the legal recognition that the authorities above you have set forth. So as a Christian, you can't vote against that. I'm also a pacifist, so I don't support the government in any way. That's a whole other subject that we can talk about with Cole Valley and their militaristic leanings and that kind of stuff. But I think that when your church is the authority placed above you and they won't recognize your marriage, how do you go about navigating that as a same-sex couple? Do you just find another church that does recognize it, or what do you do there? So I don't know. That's not really answering your question, but
well, yeah, let's bring it back to Cole Valley. You know, what was it like that in those hallways and in those classrooms and in chapel?
So the Cole Valley Speak support group and some of the other interviews, I think, have brought up the Worldview class that talked about gay people as doing all sorts of off-the-wall sexual exploits.
Like what?
Light bulbs for anal sex, and unique sex and all this kind of stuff.
You cracked up there for a second. What was it? This is good juicy stuff. I need to hear this.
Using any and all objects for anal sex and water sports, and
this is in a textbook, right?
Yes, this was in a textbook. I have the vaguest recollections of it, mostly because I tried to blot it out and did not pay attention during that class because I just was appalled at the time.
Did you know then that was really messed up, or you were just kind of shocked?
A bit of both. I think at the time I realized that this is not going to be representative of a population that's pretty large and diverse. I also knew that the allegations that all gay people were pedophiles in particular was upsetting, because I viewed those as and still do for obvious reasons, view those as separate, and it's apples to oranges at this point. And it seemed to be taught that if you were gay, if you were homosexual, you were on that slippery slope to pedophilia.
I very vaguely remember that, but yeah.
And that whole attitude of that was weird, because we were supposed to be a school borrowing from their core values of grace, truth, and love, and it was maybe one of those with the truth, but it wasn't even truth. And so how can you claim this is anything in line with your core values if it's not speaking grace to people, if it's not speaking love to people?
Do you blame, on that case, the textbook, do you blame the teacher or the administration? Who should have made the right call to change that textbook?
I would say the administration. Their accreditation is from ACSI, ACSI, I think. I could
American
have
Christian
the order.
Schools National or something Institute.
American Christian, yeah, something like that. Uh, and I think that by seeking out that accreditation, they seek someone to be beholden to. And when your superiors, so your creditors in this case, ask you to teach a certain thing, then you're going to have to teach it if you want to continue being accredited, which I don't fault them so much for that, for seeking accreditation, because you absolutely need that as a school. You see a lot of for-profit colleges now popping up that are not accredited, and that is horrendous because they do not advertise the fact. I applaud Coal Valley for being accredited and state accredited, but you need to be very careful about who you seek that from, because they're going to ask things of you, and sometimes those things that they ask of you may be in conflict with what you say you are.
Do you think it's in conflict with what they say they are?
If I give them the benefit of the doubt, yes.
And if you don't?
Then no, I think they're towing the party line of the fundamentalist evangelical Christian camp, which is a very small percentage of Christians. Internationally, not within America. Within America, it's a sizable group. And by sticking to that line, they're keeping their, to use a political term, constituents happy, and their customers happy.
So what do you think, from a political sense, let's say you're in charge of the school, and this ragtag group of past students that you think are heathens come at you and say, you're messed up, you're hurting kids, you don't think you are, but you are, and you need to change that. Like, there's all these, there's all these things that make that complicated, but like, how do you think through that from a organizational, political, sounds like you think the reason that's there is kind of from a political reason.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you process this movement?
There's a verse, I think, in Matthew saying someday they'll hate you because they always hated me, along those lines. And there's kind of this martyr complex among the political groups and religious groups that we've been talking about. And so by saying, okay, we're under attack for our values, we're going to double down on these values, that appeals more to your base than saying, okay, we're examining all sides and that kind of stuff. So I think they're just going to double down on everything.
So separating whether or not they will change for 1 second, do you think they could change?
Yeah. So I printed off their mission and core values statement from their website page, just because I wanted to look at it to kind of prep for talking about it.
Yeah.
And they talk about their purpose being the only reason we exist is to serve Jesus Christ by developing the whole person to impact the world for him. They have their core values, they have their mission statement, but they talk about developing the whole person. And so mind, body, and soul and all that. So they have pretty decent athletics programs, I think. I mean, football wasn't great. We went 4-4 my senior year, and that was like our best record in years. But the basketball team was always really good, and volleyball has done pretty well as well. Girls basketball and boys basketball have done well. And then I think track does pretty well as well. I don't follow that close of attention. As far as the mind and soul parts, though, is they have to set themselves above the standard. And to do that, I think they do have to change. And how they can change and would they change? I think if you adopt...
Well, what I was just going to ask is, like, is it possible to have to develop the whole person for an LGBT kid in their school?
Not the way it is now.
So do you think that this, like, this political stance that they have trumps the mission?
Whew. Yeah, because I think you can appeal to more potential customers and constituents than if you were to, bend and give concessions to one kid. You can appeal to 100 more families who are going to be, oh, they didn't bend to this liberal agenda or something like that.
Yeah, from just like a market perspective, there's a lot bigger market probably of people that want to pay for Christian education that want it to be anti-gay.
Yeah.
Then there is the people that want to pay for Christian education and want it to be gay affirming. That's probably a small market.
Yep.
But not that we're asking them to be gay affirming, because that's probably a non-starter, but just more like
hey, don't suck.
Gay agnostic maybe would be good. Just not gay hating, yeah. But, so we're actually running out of time. Do you want to give the short version of your pacifism thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So through Cole Valley, I was elementary school, junior high, until I got diagnosed, my set goal was to join the military after I graduated. That didn't pan out because I got diagnosed with bipolar, and apparently the military doesn't want to hand guns to crazy people or something like that. But I didn't come to become pacifist until my early 20s. And by that point, I was resenting Cole Valley because I feel like they should have been teaching me a truer Christian message of grace and peace and love that Jesus actually taught, rather than blind submission to the authorities and violence, which is what the government has to depend on to exist. You cannot enact law without violence. So even police forces, not just military forces. And so looking back, realizing that we said the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, and that some Christians consider that heretical and idolatry, it's like, yeah, why does Cole Valley say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning? That's really weird if you consider yourself a Christian school. So it's more and more frustration that is built up with that. But to change that culture, you have to change all of evangelical Christian culture in general. It's not just Cole Valley that does that, of course.
Do you think that Cole Valley can't be better than evangelical culture?
It probably could, but does it want to be?
And is there a market?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But keep going. I think I might have interrupted. You're on.
No, you're good. So I guess it's just that realization that, hey, there's Christians that wouldn't support this, and realizing that I did support it at the time was really bothersome to me. And what was more bothersome was the way that not just support for America, but support for a particular political party was seen as gospel. there was a student who came in wearing a t-shirt for a particular political candidate who is not going to be supported in 2008. Leave that to people's imaginations of who that was.
Wait, is this the Obama t-shirt?
Yeah, Obama t-shirt. I was going to
triangulating interviews, making connections.
Well, this Obama t-shirt, so she walks in wearing an Obama t-shirt and the class boos her. And thankfully, the teacher did say something like, hey, this is really not okay. People have freedom of choice in this country. We can vote for whoever we want. But that combined with just some teachers' statements and that kind of stuff. I went back to a football game a year ago, and the teacher asked me, "You're not a liberal, are you?" Like, almost in that exact tone of voice, because I had gone to Evergreen State College in Washington for a little bit. And I was just assumed, oh, going to Evergreen, you must be a liberal. I'm not. I'm a pacifist, so I don't support the government at all. But so I just kind of looked at him like, well, no, but what? Like, who thinks that's an appropriate question to ask?
Right.
And it's this worship of political power that has been going on since Constantine that has just gotten worse in the United States.
Dude, you are spot on with the history lessons, man.
Yeah. I am a history major.
Are you? Okay, good. Represent. Okay, so unless you've got a little bit more on that or more on another topic we haven't brought up yet, I've got my last couple questions for you.
Sounds good.
All right. So if Coal Valley administration watched this video, what message do you have for them? You have notes for this?
Yes, I do. Well, I have their core values. So
right.
The school that exists to serve God, our core values reflect his character. They provide the context in which day-to-day decisions are made. And then below that, under the section entitled Grace, it says cultivate an environment where forgiveness is practiced and encouraged. And I think the idea there is that you're encouraging the student body to be forgiving and encouraging of one another. And I would just ask, if you're not already, to reconsider that daily, that are we actually doing this? Are we modeling true Christ-like behavior for our students? And are we encouraging that where if they are Christ-like, that'll be rewarded instead of being petty, being self-serving, being beholden to the American government, not to put my own political thing.
Or the Republican Party.
Yeah. If we're going to name names on the party, yeah. And to the Republican Party, because it absolutely is the Republican Party that evangelical Christians feel like they have to serve. And you need to be able to teach that Christians have freedom. Luther writes an entire book called Freedom of a Christian, talking about this freedom from the guilt and freedom from feeling like you're part of a pecking order, and that you can follow your vocation, whatever that vocation is.
Mm-hmm. What message do you have to a parent that is considering putting their kids in Coal Valley, maybe in particular parents that have children with some mental health challenges? Or maybe if those are two separate answers, make sure both of them. Maybe they're
I would say make sure that your kid is a well-rounded in their social interactions, because it's very quickly becomes a bubble where you do not know people outside the bubble. So when you get outside the bubble into college or professional settings, they don't know how to interact with people. I'll recount one short story about my my dad had a student when he was at Boise Bible College who did not come from Coal Valley, came from another, I think a homeschool environment, actually, maybe a Christian school. I'm not sure which. Someone had mentioned Jack Daniels, and he asked, "Who's Jack Daniels?" And it was just so telling of how little he knew of the actual world, and yet he's training to be a pastor. And if Coal Valley wants their students to be Christian leaders in 21st century America, they're going to have to know how to interact with people. So if your kid isn't already good at that, don't put them in Coal Valley, because they are going to be so quickly absorbed into that bubble where they're not going to be exposed to ideas outside of that. They're not going to learn how to question or understand other people's viewpoints. But if they have a mental illness, be sure that they have support system outside of Coal Valley as well, and that they have a good therapist, good psychiatrist, the whole 9 yards outside of Coal Valley. Do not depend on Coal Valley for assistance.
Who's Jack Daniels? Do you have a cup with you?
Yeah.
Okay. What message do you have for current students, in particular, maybe students that maybe are going through some of the stuff that you went through?
Yeah. If you're a current student, I would say continue to cultivate an inquiring mind. Ask your teachers and your church leaders lots and lots of questions. Always be asking questions, and then look to ask questions of people who aren't in the church and find out what they believe. If you want to love your neighbor, that starts with knowing what they believe. So my dad teaches world religions courses, and that's kind of his set value there, is that if you want to understand your neighbor, you have to understand what they believe, and that's how you love on people, is understand where they're coming from. And if you're going through the same stuff I did, look for help now, not wait to get first. Okay, other of this, they don't get help, so I don't need help. You absolutely need help. Everyone needs help. I probably overselling it, but psychotherapy and psychiatric medication has kept me alive, and I'm still working on my undergrad at 25. It takes a little bit longer. Things suck at times, but you get better with practice coping skills, and Coal Valley is not going to give those coping skills to you.
Yeah. Man, good stuff. One of these days we're just going to have to go deep dive on the historical and philosophical foundations of Coal Valley education.
Yeah.
Maybe a 3-hour call. I think that'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Joe. There. Yeah. No, this was great. Thanks a ton for making the time. I think that several people will enjoy this.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks again. Talk to you later.
See ya.
Bye.